So yeah, so I prepared a presentation for you, just for making things clear. So first, who am I? So for those that don't know me, so my name is Mounir El Azzouzi. So I am a medical device expert, specialized in quality and regulatory affairs. And I'm also driving the company Easy Medical Device GmbH, which is in Basel, Switzerland, where we are doing training, consultancy, as I've said, for a lot of our customers, and coaching also. I'm coaching also some people related to their career or related to understanding medical devices. So I'm doing that for some of the teams. And yes, I'm also a blogger, podcaster, YouTuber. So people are saying that mainly that I have all those things are happening. And so the objective really for me, it's why also I'm doing all those videos, all those blog posts, everything is to help medical device manufacturers to place compliant, which is, I should have bolded that, maybe compliant medical devices on the market. So yeah, don't hesitate yet to contact me if you have any need. I will try to help you as much as I can. Okay. Next step is that normally what we are doing is that we are going through the process of classification of medical devices. But before to classify a medical device, it is important that you are qualifying your product as a medical device. I have also a lot of customers that are coming to me and saying, "Oh, I have my products, I want these products to be on the market. So can you help me to put it on the market?" And when I'm looking, the product is not really needed to be made or available on the market, if I can say. So it's why it is important to have also a clear understanding of what is a medical device and what is not. But yeah, it's something that maybe people are not really aware of. And the first step normally is qualification. So how can we first qualify your product as a medical device before starting with the classification immediately? Because there is some products that are not qualified at all. For example, it's not the same in US and Europe. In US, some medical devices can be made for animals, so veterinary. But in Europe, no, the definition is clear. It's only for human beings. So you cannot put veterinary products under the EU certification, CE marking, because it's not really a medical device. Yeah, and then when we are finalizing with the qualification, we are going to classification. So we are classifying the devices. And then when we know the classification is really to provide you the risk related to your product. And when we are finalizing with this risk to understand that, then we are going to the conformity assessment, which is, as I've said, the highway, which highway I should take to go to the market. And it tells you which are the options, etc., for you to go to the market following the classification of your device. Okay, so as I've said, we will focus ourselves only on the classification. So I will not go through the qualification or conformity assessment. We'll go through specifically on the classification. We will provide you with some examples, but before that, I wanted to give you some understanding. As I've said, we have the medical device classification is classifying products within many categories, and we have it from low risk to high risk. So let's go through that and define what are the risks. I know that maybe a lot of people knows already that, but it's just a refresher for people that don't know. So we'll go quickly through that. We have first the class 1 products. We have subclasses to class 1, which is class 1S for sterile, class 1M for measuring function, and class 1R for reusable. So surgical reusable products. So it's important, surgical reusable product. Not all the products are under class 1R. Then we have class 2A, then class 2B, and then class 3. So what are the differences with all those classes? First, it's difference in terms of certification. The class 1, we have self-certification, which means that you can define by yourself that the product is correct, and then sign the declaration of conformity, and then you can place the product on the market. No need of a notified body, no need of anybody to check your product. It is self-certification. But as it is low risk, we can think that, yeah, even if you are making a mistake, normally the risk is really low, but you have really to be careful on that, because if a competent authority discover that you are not classifying well your products, maybe they can come and visit you. So it's really important also. Then we have class 1S, M, and R. It's not the same as class 1, even if it's a subclass. You still need a notified body for partial certification. They will certify only the specificity of this product. So if it's class 1S, they will certify the sterilization, class 1M, the measuring function, and class 1R, the reusable function. So it's important that you are checking that specifically. And class 1R is the difference with MDD. Class 1R didn't exist before. It's a new thing that is coming. And if your products are now following under class 1R, you are maybe lucky or not, because it depends from which side you are viewing that. You are having a transition period, an extension of the transition period until May 2024. So it means that before you were class 1, now you are class 1R, so you need a notified body. Then your products can be placed on the market, continue to be placed on the market until May 2024, and then you will fall under the MDR, so the new medical device regulation, with a notified body. So it is just a precision for that. Then you have class 2A, 2B, and 3. And for that, you need the notified body. It's a full certification. So you see that if you are classifying your products wrongly, it can also have some consequence on what is the certification model that you have to follow. So it's why it's important that you are classifying that correctly. Okay, let's go now through some vocabulary. Some people are just falling directly under the classification model, but you have to understand first some vocabulary that are used inside the different rules. The first one is duration of use. So duration of use is something really important, because there is 3 models actually. We have the transient use, which is less than 60 minutes, the short-term use, which is between 60 minutes and 30 days, and the long term, which is more than 30 days. So it depends where is falling your product. But if you are seeing on a rule that it says it's for transient use or short-term use or long-term use, you have to understand how your product is working, and if it is more than 60 minutes or more than 30 days. And then what is also important is other vocabulary that you have to understand, which is continuous use. So it means that it's not like you are using that, if I can say, with products just punctually. It's continuous use. So how long this product was used, and we have a rule, an implementing rule that I will show you later, where it's saying to you exactly what means continuous use, which is also an important word here, continuous use. Then we have other vocabulary that to understand. We have body orifice. What is that? We have active device intended for diagnosis and monitoring. Active device is also something important to understand. What is an active device? You have active therapeutic device. You have surgical invasive device. It's different than invasive devices, so it's also a difference. There is so many other vocabulary that you have to understand before you can say that, yes, you know how to classify your products. There is these vocabularies that you can find on Annex 8 of the medical device regulation. But yeah, if you go to a certain rule, you will read the rule and you will say, oh, what is an active device? Then you have to go to the definition. What is a therapeutic device? Then you have to go to the definition, etc., etc. So it's really important that you are understanding those definitions, because it can change completely the interpretation of the classification rule. Then you have just a question maybe from the people. Alone or with a notified body. So the classification, just for understanding, it is alone. It's not with a notified body. You have to do that. This exercise, you have to do it alone. But I will show you the consequence if you are not doing that correctly with a notified body. So I will show that at the end of the presentation. But yeah, it's clear that this device, this classification should be done alone. So you have to do that directly. You have to see the classification as a game. So here are the rules of the game. So the intended purpose governs the classification. You cannot classify a product if you don't know what is its intended purpose. Because when you will read the rule, it doesn't tell you a wheelchair is classified as that. It tells you sometimes this product is classified as that, but it doesn't tell you everything. You have to understand that a mechanical use or what is exactly the use of the products so that you can define what is the classification. If your device is also used with another device, it's not a combination. It is each device has to be classified by itself. So you have really to take one device and the other and classify them. So if it's a combination of 3 devices, then you have 3 classification to provide for each devices. If it's a software that drives a device, it is the classification of the device, not the software. The classification of the device that should be used. If the device is class 2A, but it's controlled by a software, the software is also class 2A. If it's a software by itself, so it's an application or a software, we call that software as a medical device, then it's classified by its own. It's not classified because it's on this machine or this machine, it's classified by its own. This is also important. Sometimes when you are looking at the rules, you find that many rules applies. Then the idea is, which one should I choose? You should choose the most critical one. So you should choose the rule that is with the highest risk at all. So if you have a rule that is classifying your product as class 2A and another as class 3, then the device is class 3. It's what we are seeing that. It's the same. Yeah. So when you are classifying the products, you have many rules, but you have also many functions on the device. So if you have 5 functions of the device, the 5 functions have different fall under different rules. You take the rule that is the highest. So if they have 5 functions, if one function is class 1 and one function is class 3, this is the class 3 rule that will be really applicable here. And continuous use. So as I've told you, there is some interpretation to have on continuous use. What does it mean? So we have the entire use of the device, even if there is some temporary interruption, for example, for cleaning or this kind of thing. So you have to clean the device before to put that again. Or it's an accumulation of use of the same kind of device. So if you are replacing, it's like a catheter or something that you are putting on the body of the person, but you have to replace it by the same catheter because you cannot use it more than 10 minutes or 60 minutes, etc. Then it's the same device, and it's a continuous use. It's the accumulation of use of this device all along the product. So it's not like it is just for 60 minutes, then you stop, and then you take another same device on the patient, then it's again 60 minutes. No, it's 60 plus 60 plus 60 plus 60, so which can go until 30 days or more than 30 days. Okay, these are the rules of the game. So I hope you understand them. So there is 4 sections on the classification rules. We have the non-invasive devices. We have the invasive devices. So each rule is falling under that. And then we have the active devices, and we have the special rules, which constitute 22 rules at all. So if you are falling under the non-invasive devices, you can go maybe on the section non-invasive devices, but the idea also is that you are looking at all the other rules. Why? Because maybe there is a special rule that is applicable to your device. Maybe if it's not an active device, no need to go to active devices, but if there is maybe a special rule, you can go and look there and find if there is maybe a rule that is applicable for your device. Then you have also to take that into account. But the rule normally is that you are going through each rule one by one. Even if you find the rule that is applicable to your device, maybe there is another one. So go and check the next one and the next one and the next one. Okay, let's play the game now. So if you are interested to play the game, what I can propose you is, or you go to the website of the EUMDR website, so where there is the rules, so you go to Annex 8, or you can also download the form that I made available at easymedicaldevice.com/shop. It's for free. So you can get this form where I try to summarize all the rules directly there. So you can get that. You can also print it. You can do it, use whatever. So what I propose you is to get that, because now what I will do is that I will show you some examples, and then I will give you maybe 1 minute or two, and then we will look at what is the answer of the for the device. What I'm looking for is the classification that you will find and the rule that is applicable, and then we can check if you are correct. But yeah, you can do also the exercise by yourself. So as soon as you see that, you can look at it and you can look at the answer, so that we are really getting that. Okay, let's make an example first. So glasses. This is a medical device. This is a medical device because it's an alleviation of a certain disability. I cannot see very well, so I'm using that to help me to see better, to have a better sight. So this is a medical device. What can we say about it? It is a pair of glasses, so it's non-invasive, and it is long-term use, because after 60 minutes, I still have it. And even after 30 days, I can still even sleep with it, have it with me, etc. So it's not like something that I will remove. I can remove that, but mainly it is also possible that I keep that for more than 30 days. I would not recommend that. You need to have some hygiene on it, but it's possible. So but it's also what the manufacturers will say. So if you are looking at that, it's easy, this one. If you are looking at that, what is the classification and what is the rule? So this one is class 1, rule 1. Easy. So it's not like a very difficult one. So what does it mean also for that one? It means that you don't need a notified body. You have self-certification. So you are creating your dossier for self-certification, and then you can sell these products to maybe the shops that are delivering that to the patients. So this is an example. Your turn now. So if you want, you can go to the comments and just write on the comments what is your opinion, if I can say, class 1, class 1 and rule, etc. As I've said, you can or get this form, or you can go directly to the link regarding the website, Europa website. So you just go on Google, you put EU MDR 2017-745, and then you go at the bottom nearly, and there is Annex 8, and in Annex 8 you will get all the rules and all the chapters and all what we said from now. So you can get that directly. Okay, so let me now go to the next example. So just things. Here I will provide you some different techniques, if I can say, to understand what is the classification of a device. So it's not like we are still going under the same thing. So there are other documents that I will show you that you can use for classification of a device, because sometimes it's really difficult, even when you have the rule, it's really difficult. So then you can get some other devices, some other documents to help you. There are some documents, and I will show you, that are still under MDD. So it's not like they are updated for MDR. They are still under MDD. But the idea is more to say, to give me a hint. What is a hint under MDD of the classification of the product, so that I can also translate that to the MDR rule, because sometimes we are trying to understand if this product falls under this rule or this rule, and the difference between MDD and MDR is sometimes there is no difference sometimes. So you can use the same rule and the same context and same arguments, so that it's easy. Okay, let's go now to the next one. Okay, quiz 1. So a blood bag. This one is easy also. I just try to make it gradually easy for you. So blood bag. So if you go to the Annex 8, Chapter 3 for the rules, you can go for Rule 1, then Rule 2, then Rule 3, etc. And you can read it and you can try to find where this product, a blood bag, will fall. So a blood bag is non-invasive, because it's not the blood bag that is invasive, it's a syringe that you are attaching to the catheter that goes to the patient, but the blood bag by itself is not invasive, and it's transient. I will put it also short-term use. I suppose that a blood bag is not taking more than 60 minutes to be filled on the patient, I suppose, but I don't know. So that's why I put also some short term use, because some people will maybe say to me, no, my blood bag has this continence and it can maybe take longer, or etc. So I don't know. I'm not a specialist of blood bag, so I cannot tell you. Okay, so I have already some answers. Yes, good. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, interesting. I have some good answers. Should I give more time? So the idea of the blood bag is the fact that when you are looking at the directive at the Annex 8, it's already written inside. It says a blood bag is, and the blood bag is class 2B, and you go to rule 2. When you go to rule 2, it tells you exactly this is a medical device, here is a class, but except a blood bag, which is a class 2B. So it's something that is easy, because as I told you, sometimes the rules are defining directly which element is for which class, which is helping a lot. Class 1 non-sterile, no, no, it's 2B. Just looking at the comments. Yeah. So yeah, easy one. So we have that, and I hope you understand now the concept. More difficult one. Quiz 2. So this is a X-ray radiation device. So I try really to go through all the different classes. So try to see what you will find on this one. So an X-ray radiation device is just an equipment that is providing those diagnostic or those monitoring. So they are scanning your body to have this X-ray picture. So when you are looking at that, you can think that this is an active device. But yeah, as I've said, you have to go through all the rules to see which one will be applicable to that. Okay, I see some rule. Rule 3, class 2B. Rule class 2A, class 3. Class 3, class 2A. Oh, we have a lot of diversity here. Can you put the rule if you have rule 3 for one, but I don't see the rules for the other, just to see if you have the same rules as what I have, because this one is also obvious. It's written directly on the Annex 8. It's written directly. This is the device that doing X-ray radiation things are this class. So it's not like an interpretation. As I said, there is a lot of rules where you have to interpret, but there is some rules where it's directly written. Here is the thing. 2A. Okay, so let me show you. The answer is 2A, and it's rule 17. So in rule 17, let me check quickly what is written exactly. Rule 17. Device specifically intended for recording of diagnostic images generated by X-ray radiation are classified as class 2A. So if I'm not mistaken, this is falling under this rule. But if you have other rules, let me know, because as I've said, you have really to check all the possibilities. And this is the difficulty, is the fact that you find something, you think, oh, it's the right one, but maybe if you go to another rule, you will find another element. For example, in active devices, do you consider radiation as invasive or not? Do you consider radiation as invasive or not? Radiation, I suppose yes. Radiation can be, as I said, I'm not a specialist on all those devices, but I suppose yes, radiation can be invasive, can be also, I suppose, can we say it's also an exchange of energy or something like that? Because there is some rules about that, active devices, rule 9, for example, where there is an exchange of energy. Active devices where there is emitting of radiation, which is class 2B then. So is this something that is also falling under there? Yeah, Robert Van Boxer, active device intended to emit ionizing radiation and intended for diagnostic of therapeutic. Yeah, so class 2B also. So yeah, here we have, for example, class 2B with rule 9. I think it's if I read that well, it should be rule 9. So you see that there is many rules that are applicable. Here we have rule 17 for 2A. We have rule 9 for 2B. if we are considering the element that is doing the radiation, etc., etc. What is rule 17 for recording, not for source of radiation? Yeah, correct. Yeah, maybe I made a mistake here on just writing the term, but yeah, it's correct. It's for recording, not for emitting. So it's also the difference here. So thank you for that. Is there any other rule that is applicable? Rule 10. Let me check rule 10. Active device intended for diagnosis and monitoring are as class 2A. Okay. Rule 10, if they are intended for supply of energy, which is absorbed by the human body, except for device intended for illuminating the patient. Okay. If they are intended to image in vivo distribution of radiopharmaceuticals, so it's not X-ray, this one. If they are intended to allow direct diagnosis of monitoring of vital function, etc. So you see there is many rules that are applicable to that. And what is possible is that it depends really, as I've said on one of the rules that I defined, is the intended purpose of your device. Is it for recording only? Is it for emitting the radiation? Is it for diagnosing? Is it for monitoring, etc., which is there. So Robert says bottom. So active device intended to emit. Okay, this one. Active devices intended to emit ionizing radiation and intended to diagnose or therapeutic radiology, including interventional radiology devices and device which controls or monitors such device, or which directly influence their performance as classified to be. So this one is for emitting. Rule 17 is more for recording. So if the device is doing emission and record, then it's the highest class that is ongoing, which is then rule 10. Is it correct? There are some X-rays only for fractures, yes. But as I said, it depends really what is the intended purpose and if it's falling under the definition here. Okay, so I think this one, as you've seen, it's controversial in case you have a different intended purpose for each of the functions. So if you have many functions of your device, you should look at each of the parameters of each of the function, and then you have to pick the one that with the highest risk. So here, if we are talking about just recording, it should be rule 17. If it's emitting, it's rule 10, as we see, emitting diagnostic, rule 10. But yeah, there is many other things. This shows also the difficulty when you have some devices that are distributed with many manufacturers. You have a manufacturer that has a device with certain function, another one that has the same device but with maybe additional functions. And sometimes we are comparing ourselves and say, oh, it's the same as this one, so it is this class. But you have really to make this exercise by yourself, define all the functions that you have, and then define the classification of it. Let's go to quiz number 3. This one. This is a pre-filled syringe. It's invasive, it's transient use. This is there is a trick here, so it's not like I will make you think a lot. You have to be careful when you are receiving this kind of device and ask you for classification. As I've told you at the beginning, there are some products that are medical devices, but there are some products that look like a medical device, but they are not. So you have to be careful on that. This one is we call that a combination product. So it means that you have the syringe, but it's pre-filled with a drug. So in that case, what is the main function of this product? The main function of this product is to inject to you this drug. The syringe is just the medium for it, but it's to inject this drug. This is the main function. The main function is not the device. Maybe if you have some medicine, you can take that orally. You can have an injection. You can have many other means, maybe to introduce this drug on your body. Here, this is with the syringe. The syringe, as I said, is just a medium, but the main function, the main intended purpose of this device is to get the drug, because this is a drug that will cure your disease. So in that case, this is not considered as a medical device. You have to be careful also. Even if it's not considered as a medical device, with the MDR, there are 2 things to do. First, you have to submit this dossier within the competent authority for a drug. because it's mainly what you are normally doing for drug. But with Article 117 now of the MDR, you have also to take the device and to make a specific assessment regarding the device itself, regarding the GSPR. But for that, you need a notified body. I'm preparing a podcast related to Article 117 so that we can also have a better understanding of combination products. But for those that are answering yes, no MD, filled or not, it is filled, so it's pre-filled. Drug device, yes. Drug device combination. Article 117, as we've said, related to this product. So I hope you understand that a classification of a device is really a step-by-step. First, is it a device? Because maybe it's not. So don't start to try to classify it where you didn't go to the first step, which is maybe it's not a device at all. Okay, quiz number 4. I just hid the brands here, but it is a wound irrigation solution containing antimicrobial agents. So it's a bit a long definition. So it's invasive. I suppose it's transient use because it's not like something that will remain a long time. It's just to make irrigation, wound irrigation, and then it's going out. So what will be your idea about this one? There is also a good information about that. I will show you a certain document where you can already have the answer. It's not need to think about it a long time. It's already marked on it. Which is why I wanted to introduce this document, because you can use some guidance that are existing, which will show you exactly some specific cases. So it's guidance where there is some cases on it. What I see here, medical device, 2A. Okay, I have a 2A. Locally dispersed. Yes, locally dispersed. Okay, I have one. Robert said rule 4, class 2A. If they are principally intended to manage the microenvironment of injury. Okay, let's check if it will be that. Okay, so let's go through that. Oh, I have different one than you, class 2A, rule 4. So class 3, rule 14. As I've said, one thing here that is important is the fact that sometimes you have different interpretation, and it's why you maybe see some different interpretation here, because you have really to make a full investigation of the device to understand that. Here, the answer, I find it directly on a certain document where it says antimicrobial agent or substances are generally considered to be medicinal substances when intended for a medical purpose. Therefore, a wound irrigation solution containing an antimicrobial agent, irrespective of the amount of the antimicrobial substance liable to act on the body, will be considered to be class 3 according to rule 13. Here is rule 13 because it is under the MDD. Why? Because I did find all this information on the Borderline Manual. The Borderline Manual is really an important document that can help you. It's still updated. It's really continuously updated. It's a document that is providing you some specific cases of some products. And for now, when you are looking at it, it covers the 9342 EC. But I hope they will have the same with the medical device regulation. As I've said, when you are looking at that, it provides you some hints, and then you have to make some interpretation related to the medical device regulation. So you can take the same rule, or you can look if there is a different rules existing. So for now, for this one, on this definition, apparently it is medical device containing an antimicrobial, so for them a medicinal product, so which is the reason why they classified that under this. So I put the link below, but you can just go to Google, you write medical device Borderline Manual, and then you get the information, you get the document directly, so the PDF, so you can download that. There is a lot of cases inside. There is a borderline between drug and device, borderline between device and in vitro diagnostic, between device and biocide, between device and cosmetic, etc., etc. So it's maybe something that can be really useful. And as I've said, when you will read the rules, you will maybe think this is that, but when you will read the arguments, because they put also some arguments on the Borderline Manual, you can maybe understand, because of that, it is maybe goes from transient use to short-term use when we think maybe it's just only a transient use. So it's really important to have that. Yeah, I have one important thing is maybe Rule 22. I didn't look at this one, but Rule 22. I put the Rule 22 in one of the example. Rule 22. No, Rule 21. Maybe you are thinking. Let me check. It's Rule 21 normally. Rule 21. There is substances based device. Rule 21 is changing completely the game for medical device manufacturers, but we'll see that with an example because it's products that were class 1 are now class 3. So it's a bit strange, but it's changing the game for a lot of manufacturers. Let's go now to the next example, quiz 5. Okay, I tried to take also some software. So this is a mobile application to detect heart failure. So it's not just to count your steps or to just detect what is your beat rate. No, it is really to detect a heart failure. So it's an active device, and I consider it long-term use, but it's not really important for this rule. Anyway, for such software or application, there is nearly only one rule that is applicable, and it's a rule that is mainly containing all the information about software. What is important is that before, with the Medical Device Directive, nearly all, so 90% of the software were considered as class 1. But now with the MDR, we have a graduation of the class following the fact that maybe the software that you will build will have some kind of can damage life of the person, can kill the person, etc. Because we have now more and more applicational software that are driving some devices. Okay, what are the answers? I have class 2, class 3, class 2B, class 2B, class 3, rule 10. Rule 10, no, it is rule 11. Rule 11. It is rule 12. It was rule 12, if I remember. If I remember, it was 12 or 10. Maybe 12, if I can say with the MDD. Can't remember. And now it's rule 11. In rule 11, we have class 2B. I estimate class 2B, but maybe we can have some arguments here. So there is no death, but here we have monitoring of physiological process. And this physiological process, if it's not monitored quickly, maybe it can lead to an immediate danger for the patient because it's detecting the heart failure. So then I estimate class 2B, but maybe I'm wrong. It's not like I'm completely right for that, because you have really to look at all the different elements. It says if it's a death or irreversible deterioration of the person, then it's class 3. If it is a serious deterioration of the person or surgical or of health or a surgical intervention, then it's a class 2B. If it's intended for monitor or physiological process, it's classified as class 2A, except if the monitoring of it's a monitoring of a vital physiological parameter, then with an immediate danger for the patient, which is then class 2B. And for all the other cases, it's class 1. So you see that there is a graduation of things where you have really to define what is the intended purpose of your device. If your device has, if you are, for example, now trying to place this kind of device on the market, think first maybe to find what is, if you can fall under the lowest rule or lowest classification, so that you can have some easy way to place the device in the market, and then gradually increase the rule maybe and have that all the elements to increase the features or the elements of your device, but it will also increase the classification of it. So it is really, really important. Some are saying class 3, which is interesting. As I said, if it is death or irreversible deterioration of personal health, then it's class 3. But yeah, you have to prove that the device also is doing that. So it's why I'm saying that here what I'm providing you is just my interpretation, but one manufacturer or another can have different interpretation just due to the fact that the feature he proposed are different. Maybe the feature are really detecting something that if it's not detected, you are dead, or a feature that is detecting if you are not detecting that, you have just some how did they say? some deterioration, irreversible deterioration, or serious deterioration. So you have really to evaluate that. To do that, you are doing a risk analysis. So you are defining your risk management, your risk analysis. You define what is the risk of your device, what can happen, and then from there you can define if there is a risk of death. If there is a risk of death, can you reduce this risk? How can you do so? ISO 14971 is one of the ISO that you can use. I mean, you should maybe use that specifically for defining the risk, because without that, you can really not answer to this question: is my device really having a risk of death or risk of irreversible deterioration? What we have also then, okay, next one. Oh, this one is good. Stent covered with an anticoagulant. So it is invasive, it's long-term use, it's within the central circulatory system. So this is an implant. So for people that don't know what it is like a mesh that you are inserting. It's collapsed, if I can say, when you are inserting that on a catheter inside an artery, and then, or venous, and then an artery mainly, and then you are using a balloon to expand this tube to make it around the shape of your artery, and then it's maintaining the artery open. And sometimes they are putting some drugs on it just to avoid that blood is clotting on the device, because it's also an it's a strand, if I can say, an external material, so then the body will attack that. So the idea is now to say we have something mechanical, but it's covered with an anticoagulant. So what it is exactly? Yeah, we have some great answers here. Class 3, class 3, class 3. Let's check what is my answer. I made a quick investigation. Okay, class 3, rule 8. Okay, let me check what is again rule 8. So it is invasive. Yes, it is invasive. All implantable invasive devices long-term. So we are talking here about long-term use. So it's not like just a short-term. That are intended for are class 2B, unless they are intended to be placed on the teeth, which is class 2A, in direct contact with the heart, the central circulatory system. So this is the case here. The central nervous system, in which case they are class 3. So then it's class 3 for that reason, if it's biological effects, etc. So all this is class 3. But some people can say also that it can fall also under rule 14, because all devices that are as an integral part integrating a substance, which is, if used separately, can be considered as a medicinal product, then etc. are class 3. So we can also use this rule, the rule 14 for that, but at the end it will be the same. It is also class 3. So you see that with one device, you can have many rules applicable, but you have, as a regulatory person, really to define which one will be working. So here we can say rule 8, we can say rule 14. I don't know if there is maybe another one. I don't know if the one with substance will go on, because the one with substance now we have really to be careful on that. The rule 21 is one that will be really used, but no, this one is not applicable because it is mainly for skin touch or absorbed by the human body or applied on the skin, etc. So it's not applicable, this one. But you see that it's something that you have really to interpret. Get all the function of your device, the intended purpose of your device, then go to all the rules. As I've said, don't miss one, just go to all the rules one by one and pick the ones that are really applicable. But I have here a lot of good answers, so thank you for that. Yeah, it's not an active device. It is really just a metal mesh that you are expanding. It's not used with any electrical or any active information, no software, nothing like that. Okay. The only energy used is the human that has maybe to blow a balloon, because the balloon then will blow and then will expand the device itself. Okay, quiz number 7. So this is for a stomach use. So an antacid. It's an invasive device. It's a short, I suppose short term. I don't know if it's more than 60 minutes, but let's say short term use. And it's going through the body orifice. So this one, with MDD, it was class 1. because it has just a mechanical function. It's not like there is any physiological, metabolic, etc. function. It's just a mechanical function. But it was class 1. Now it's different. Why? Because we have another a rule that is now in place, which is a rule that is really changing the game for a lot of those devices that were manufactured and placed on the market without any view of a notified body, even if there were a lot of substances inside, because mainly they were used on the stomach or the trachea or the nose, etc. And then for that, it was just class 1 for them, or class 2B for some others. But now with this, it goes from class 1 to nearly the highest class possible. So what is the rule? Yeah, rule 21 exactly. It is, as I've said, the rule that is really changing everything. We have rule 21 and it is class 3. Let me check again what I did put there. Yeah, class 3, if they achieve their intended purpose in the stomach or lower gastrointestinal tract, and they or their products of metabolism are systematically absorbed by the human body. This last sentence, I don't know. I'm not a specialist of antacid. Maybe some people can say, no, it's not absorbed at all. I have no clue at all. But I suppose it's absorbed, because I suppose some of the elements that we'll put inside are absorbed, but I don't know. So if one of your manufacturer is now having those kind of products that are just CE marked, not CE with a notified body number, then you have maybe to warn them to say, hey guys, you are class 1, but now you are going to class 3. So put everything in place so that you are going to the right direction. And as it is up classification of your device from class 1 to class 3, then you benefit from this extension of transition period from until May 2024. So this is also something that is really important for you, because yes, you have really to provide a lot of documentation to explain why your device is safe, why it's performant, how it is working, some clinical data, etc., etc. We had also with Robert Van Boxtel a lot of information about clinical data, so you can go there and try to find that. Yeah, no pharmacological action. Yes, normally, as I've said, an antacid for me is more like mechanical or physical, or I don't know how we call that. It's just to create a barrier at the top so that the liquid in the stomach is not getting out, if I can say. But as I said, I'm not a specialist of that. It's just what I see as this function. But you can maybe have some other things. Yeah, antacid as a pill. Yeah, it's true. But as I've said, it's a substance. So here the rule 21 says devices that are composed of substances or combination of substances that are intended to be introduced into the human body via a body orifice or applied to the skin, and that are absorbed by or locally dispersed in the human body are classified as blah, 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 blah. So even if you have a cream that you are using on your body just for making a barrier, but maybe there is an absorption of some of the elements there, then it falls also under Rule 21. So if it's applicable on the skin, if it goes also on the stomach, if it goes absorbed by the human body, applied on the nasal or oral cavity as far as of the pharynx, yes, then it falls under Rule 21. Okay, let's see what is next. Okay, this one also, it is a handheld dental mirror. It's invasive, so it goes inside the body, transient use through a body orifice. So it should be an easy one normally for you. But I will also show you a document that is also still under the MDD, but which is providing you some of the examples of devices, which is also helping. In case you have still some question, you can still go to this document. But I hope they will create a new one for that. So this one is, yes, I have the first answer. Yeah, for physical barrier. Okay, so this one is class 1, Rule 5. So it's invasive. So it means that you have to go to the section of invasive Here, so 5, all invasive devices with respect to body orifice other than surgically invasive devices, which have no connection with an active device or which are not intended to connect with a class 1 active device are classified as class 1 if they are intended for transient use. So here it's transient use. So here it's rule 5, class 1. This is also something that you can find in a certain document called the MedDev 2.4/1 Rev 9. This is a document that mainly we are using also it's a guidance for classification. This, I hope the MDCG will create the same kind of guidance for classification, where people will see also some examples. Inside, there is a list of examples for each class. So you can see class 2A, here are some examples for this rule, rule 5. Here are some examples for rule 8. Here are some examples for rule 21, which gives also some hints which kind of products are falling under which rule. So you can go and take this document, but as I've said, this document is specifically under the MDD. Actually, it's not MDR, but I suppose they will maybe create the same kind of document in future where they will provide really examples for each class, which will help you a lot, because when you will see some products that are falling under a certain rule, a certain class, it can give you some ideas for your products and can say, oh, my product is nearly similar to this one, so I suppose it will fall also under the same rule and same classification. These are really the different ways you can do to understand the classification of a product and how you can then confirm this classification. The only thing is, what if your notified body doesn't agree? So I don't know if there is a notified body that is on this audience now. But if your notified body doesn't agree, because there was a good question at the beginning, it says mainly, should you do this classification? Do you need to do it yourself or with a notified body? No, you do it yourself. So you have to do the exercise by yourself, and you have to present that to your notified body. Imagine now tomorrow you are doing your classification, you say, oh, it's a class 2A, but the notified body comes and check all the things, the features, and says, no, it's class 2B. But you are on your feet and you say, hey guys, no, it's class 2A. So there is kind of a conflict now. What is your option for this kind of thing? Now under the MDR, it is written in Article 51, that here is the process you have to follow in case there is a conflict. So it is something that is really important. If your manufacturer and notified body are under the same competent authority, then you have to ask the competent authority to make the referee, if I can say, to give them the information, and then they have to decide by themselves. I never saw this process. I don't know competent authority processes, but I suppose it can take also some time. So I don't know if this is something that will be really helping a lot. But if you can try first really to have a great discussion with notified body to solve that before to go to this process, because I suppose it can be really long. And the question is, what are you doing in the meantime? So what is the situation that you are doing in the meantime? But there is another case. There is a case if you are manufacturer, you are outside of the European Union, then you have to check where your authorized representative is located. If it's located, for example, in Germany, and your notified body is also in Germany, then you have to go to the German or competent authority for that. So it's really this competent authority that has to make the referee for your product, even if you are located in Japan or in India. So your authorized representative is the competent authority of your authorized representative is the one that will choose or that will take the decision for you. And now for here, for the same. So, I mean, now the difference is that if the manufacturer or the authorized representative are under one competent authority and the notified body is under another competent authority, then it's more difficult. So the manufacturer notified body will go to his competent authority, and the competent authority of the manufacturer or the authorized representative will consult the competent authority of your notified body. So there will be normally a communication between them. So this is mainly the process that is written under Article 51. So I suppose this is really an extreme process. I hope you will not really fall under that. But if you are, here is how it will be working if you have really a conflict in terms of classification. I can understand that, because if you are deciding, if you are making really a great assessment and you find it's class 2A, but your notified body maybe has another opinion and says, no, it's class 2B, you'll have to change a lot of things. You have maybe to create another documentation. Maybe you have, if you are falling under some active device, you have maybe to go to some committees, etc., etc. So it's not a small change, if I can say. So you have really to have a clear understanding of that. But if you are really sure of you, then here is the process that you have to go to do that. What he's saying here, in many cases, I see the conflict between competent authority in different countries about classification. Yes, but it's out of the local competent authority. Yeah, so here, the check that you have to do, you can do the check, as I said, with an expert, also with a consultant. I mean, more you have some views from many people, better it is, because then you will get really a great insight. Don't do that by yourself if you are not really sure. If at one point you are not sure, contact some consultants. You should have a PRC here, as Shuki is saying. You have some PRC, so you can also work with the PRC, who is normally qualified also to help you on that. But in case, you can still also go with get an opinion from a consultant or this or that. But this is really important, because as soon as you have your classification, it will define all the rest. It will define the conformity assessment rule that you can choose. It will define the way that notified bodies will also check your devices. If you have many of the same device, there will be some sampling or no sampling or a full check for each device, etc., etc. So it defines how the notified body will make the conformity assessment, which conformity assessment you have to follow, and how the check will be done. So it's why it's really important. What about if you auto-certificate the product as class 1? No conflict with notified body. Okay, yeah. If you are class 1, so it's certification. I have made an episode about that with, if I remember, with Eric Volbrecht. So if you are classifying your product as class 1, yes, there is no notified body. There is even no competent authority really that is looking at that. But yeah, it is the competent authority that should normally check that and verify that you are placing compliant medical device on the market. If you are doing that on purpose and they discover that, then they can stop you. They can give you a fine. They can stop your business, if I can say. If you are giving some products and you have made some mistakes, then you have really to justify why you thought that it was a class 1. But then you will have to correct everything again and to place again new products on the market with the new certification. But it is a case where, yeah, it is between you, not manufacturer, and the competent authority. Notified bodies have nothing to do with that. So it's why, yeah, on this Article 51, it's not really for class 1 product. It's really for the one that have a conflict with their notified bodies. Okay, so if you want to get more information about medical device classification, I have made an article on my blog where we have the complete guide. I put all the information there. I put some infographics. I put also the links for the form that I've created for the classification. So try to use that. Try to define all the different possibilities for you to get the classification. And as I've said, you can have different opinions from one to the other, because as I've said, what is important is really the function that you are using for your device. So it's not like every device have the same function. No, each device can be different. So you have really to evaluate device by device to define the classification of your product. But it is really critical, because if you are not doing that correctly, you can have really a lot of problems afterwards. Imagine now that you are putting a device on the market as class 2A, but if it's class 3, then you can stop the device. You have to redesign everything. You have to, I mean, it can be dramatical for your company. So do it good at the beginning. So garbage in, garbage out, as we are saying. So do it good at the beginning so that we don't have any issue. Okay, so last message is keep calm and accept MDR. I still have a lot of people that are asking me if the MDR will be postponed. For me, I suppose no, but yeah, we never know. But for me, you have to go through MDR. There is no other way to make it happen, and then you have to get all the supports needed to make that. So there is a lot of consultants. I have them also on my podcast. If you want to contact them, you can contact me also. I'm helping also a lot of manufacturers related to that to place compliant medicals on the market. So here is the objective of Easy Medical Device: help you place compliant medical devices on the market. I should really bold the compliance because it's really the important word here. Okay, so if you want to contact me, here is my email address. Here is my phone number. Don't hesitate. And if you have any question or anything that you want to ask me, you can also drop me an email, and I will try to answer to that as soon as possible. So I hope you liked it. I will try to make other sessions like that with some really examples, some quizzes, because I think when you are practicing, you are learning a lot. So this is really the objective of that. But if you like it, please just put a comment. I will also have that on a replay on the YouTube channel, so I will put that there. I will put also the presentation that I made here. So the PowerPoint, I will put that in the show notes, so you can go there and just download that. There will be all the questions plus the rules. But as I've said, the rule depends also on the interpretation, on the function of your device. So I maybe put rule 8 or 9, etc., but it's not the one that is applicable to your products, because you have really to look at the products on his full process, not just on one function or on another. Okay, so thank you for your help. Thank you for all the comments. I really liked the fact that we have this interaction, and I hope I will do other sessions like that, so just to help you to remain compliant. So thank you, and I wish you a nice day.